Aidan, you have a fabulous record in the Dubai Duty Free Irish Derby. How important a race is it to you and all at Ballydoyle?
It's vital, really. It's a very prestigious race, Steve. It's obviously all the Derby horses usually come together at the Curragh. The Curragh is probably the fairest track of all. It's a proper mile and a half, and every horse gets a run usually. There's really nowhere to hide at the Curragh, and you really know what's the best middle-list 3-year-old colt, really.
You've had 10 winners, including incredibly the last 7 when I was looking it up. Any of those have a special place in you for whatever reason?
I suppose obviously Galileo, High Chaparral have to stand out, both of them. Obviously there were 2 amazing colts really, and both of them are coming to the Curragh after winning Epsom, so obviously Camelot was unbelievable last year as well, so I suppose he's another big one. I suppose what was the big worry about Camelot, the ground was very heavy that day, and like he was a real fast ground horse, and listen, that was probably a big pressure day, but it was great that he came through it.
The thing that they've got in common with this year's runner, or this year's main runner, Ruler of the World, is they're coming there on the back of an Epsom victory. Do you see any similarities?
Yeah, I suppose. Listen, obviously, Ruler of the World, we always saw a lot of him. I think as a 2-year-old he didn't run, but he was favoured for the Chesham as a 2-year-old, this horse. So like, we thought a lot of him early as his 2-year-old. He got a few setbacks then and didn't get to run. But I suppose he's a horse that can quicken. He travels and he quickens usually. So listen, we've been very happy with him, Steve, since Epsom.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the obviously the Curragh is a different test than Epsom. In terms of pure times, Epsom is maybe a slightly stiffer track, different track, I know, but a slightly stiffer track. Is there, Ruler looked like he's a strong stayer. Is there any worry at all about running on a different track, on a less testing track, so than Epsom?
Yeah, I suppose he won his maiden at the Curragh over 1.25 miles, Steve. So like obviously he won his trial over 1.5 miles at Chester, but quickened very well as well. And I think he quickened well at Epsom. I think he might have came from behind the second horse. I think now I stand to be corrected on that, but quickened well down the straight when he did quicken. So listen, well, hopefully the Curragh usually suits most horses. It's usually very fair. It's an open, big galloping track and a good big straight in it. So,
what would be the thinking behind, in general, like not just this year? You know, like some years you might run a few, some years you might run 2. A brief little couple of weeks ago, it might have been 1. What's your, just trying to get behind? What's the thinking behind that? What are you thinking about?
You know, obviously we were conscious we didn't want to run too many, and at the same time we wanted to support the race. And like we think this year there's a good, solid field of horses coming. So obviously, like the lads feel that we don't have to run too many. So like we think like obviously the best 3-year-olds around are coming.
Is it too early to say, to judge on how good a derby this year's Epsom Derby was? Is it too early? Would you say? A few horses have come out, run Battle of Marengo ran well at Royal Ascot, but what's your general view?
I suppose, listen, you can say that nearly every year, Steve, but I suppose what happens, most of the Derby horses retire after 3. Obviously are very valuable. Most of them don't run anymore at 4, so it's always very hard to assess it really. Like we were obviously very happy with our horses going to Epsom. Battle of Marengo ran very well, and he went and ran very well in Ascot after it. So we were very happy with the horses. They went through their trials well, and like for us, they were as good a trials as we've had before. We felt.
Ruler of the World himself, 3 runs so far on good ground. Is there any preference you'd have? It's a dryish forecast, I understand, on the build up to the race. Would that suit you?
I think it would, Steve. Obviously he's by Galileo, out of a King Mambo mare, so you would imagine that good ground would suit him well. He's like I said, he's a horse that can quicken, and it's usually nice ground usually suits those kind of horses usually.
And final question, just about the racetrack itself. You've already said what a fair track it was. Is there any special qualities that you think a top horse needs to win over 1.5 miles at the Curragh?
You have to get the trip well, and you have to travel, and like I suppose you have to quicken as well. I suppose it's less undulating than Epsom, so that when you turn in, it's a big straight run up to the winning post. So it's probably very fair. It suits every kind of horse. So sometimes Epsom can unbalance a horse, but we think it's a very consistent horse. But you have to stay well, you have to travel, and you have to quicken.
Jim, we're here to talk about the Dubai Duty Free Irish Derby. I'd like to take you back over 20 years, if I can, to 1992 to start with. Saint-Gervais, one of the most impressive winners I think there's ever been in the history of the race. You trained the horse. I wonder if you can tell me your memory of the day and your memory of the horse itself.
Well, the horse himself, we knew from the time that he ran first as a 2-year-old that he'd probably come into his own going a mile and a half as a 3-year-old. So all through his 2-year-old career, we were looking forward to running him as a 3-year-old. And he ran a very good race in Longchamp in the big 2-year-old race there. That was his last race as a 2-year-old. And Christy Roach said to me on the way home that we'd be winning a derby the following year. Unfortunately, he was held up for a few days before Epsom, and that told on his fitness, but he finished second. And we knew then going to the Curragh that we had a really good chance because he loved fast ground. He had to go right-handed. Going right-handed, he was way better than going left-handed. And for that reason, we felt that there'd be big improvement in him. And all we needed was pace. I didn't have one horse good enough to make the pace, so I think we put in 3, hoping that one of them would be able to bring him far enough. So as it happened anyway, they brought him to about 3.5 furlongs out, and he did the rest himself. Broke the track record, and it still stands, and I don't anticipate it'll be broken in the near future.
And that was Dr. Devious you were beating, the horse who was finished in front of you at Epsom, so it was some turnaround in form. You beat him, was it 12 lengths, I think?
About 12, yeah.
You've had some great horses. Where would he stand in the pecking order of the horses you've had?
He was way the best that I've had at a mile and a half, and probably at 10 furlongs as well.
Really?
But it wouldn't be any disgrace to any of the other horses I've had to be nearly as good as him, because I think when the international committee revised the ratings, he's joined 6th or 7th on a rating of 135. So you know, he'd have to be the best, the very best that I've had. But I've had some smart 2-year-olds, particularly Park Appeal, who's the dam of Cape Cross. She won the Mile Stakes and the Cheveley Park and was champion 2-year-old. And then, of course, in recent times, Dawn Approach, and before him, New Approach and Teofilo, they'd be the best of them.
Since then, you've not had an Irish Derby winner. You were telling me that New Approach very nearly got there, but you know, late setback and he couldn't run. I think you've had 8 runners, and it's fair to say they've all been sort of outsiders. Am I right in saying that Trading Leather, this year's representative, was probably your best chance since?
He would be, since New Approach nearly ran in it. He went lame on the Friday before the race, and there's no doubt then that Trading Leather would be best after that.
He's got a little bit of ground to make up on Libertarian, who finished in front of him at York. Are you happy that you've progressed since then, improved since then? Are you hopeful of reversing the form?
Well, we went to his home turf that day, and he has to come to ours now, so we'd be optimistic. But having said that, now if I were offered a dead heat, I'd take it.
So far, he's only run at 10 furlongs, and you take a pretty scientific approach to gauging a horse's stamina. Would you be pretty confident of Trading Leather getting the extra 2 furlongs?
Yeah, I'm fairly sure that he will. He wasn't stopping at the Curragh at 10 furlongs in a well-run race, and he's damaged by Sindar, as you know. He won both derbies and won the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe as well. So he doesn't lack stamina in his pedigree.
That Curragh run was his latest run. Would you say that was even a slight step up on York in terms of form? Because he was quite impressive that day.
Well, he would have been fitter anyway. York was his first run of the year, and it was as kind of a late decision as well. But I was running out of opportunities for him because he doesn't go on the soft, so I couldn't run him earlier.
And how about conditions? At the moment, the forecast, from what I can gather, is fairly dry in the build-up to the big race. Would you like that to be the case?
Well, we'd like good ground or faster. we wouldn't like it on the soft side.
Finally, one question about the Curragh. What qualities do you think a horse needs to excel at the Curragh?
Well, he needs to stay 1.5 miles if it's derbies you're talking about. And as you know, it's a stiff finish, but a good strong galloper with a turn of foot is what you really want.